Friends every day to Delhi back in 2005 was disturbing the deaths in the African safaris. Let's get to it.
Disturbing deaths during African safaris, from a veterinarian's fatal miscommunication with a silverback gorilla to a researcher's deadly chimpanzee encounter in Uganda's forests. But our first story begins in the vast Nyasa Reserve, where a group of friends discover that some parts of Africa are better left unexplored. It was September the 12th, 2015, and as the African sun dipped behind Nyasa Reserve, four men stood near the Lugenda River, unaware that stepping beyond patrolled trails had placed them squarely in a predator's domain, one where human confidence would soon meet ancient, lethal instincts. Ricardo Montero was a 41-year-old Portuguese engineer whose year-long assignment overseeing solar infrastructure in remote Mozambican communities had earned him a reputation for calm competence and dry humor among his colleagues.
I learned that ChatGPT works best with detailed prompts, but I hate typing them. So instead, I dictate them using WhisperFlow.
His decision to join this impromptu bush expedition came after months of technical isolation, endless days repairing converters, hauling panels, and navigating bureaucratic obstacles in places where modern conveniences were luxuries. Antonio Pires, a logistics coordinator with weekend hunting experience, had convinced Ricardo that a night in the unfiltered wilderness would provide the disconnection he craved. The group's composition seemed adequate for their modest adventure. Antonio with his hunting background, Ricardo with his precise engineer's mindset, a German expat named Jürgen, and Elias, a local tracker with security experience. Their plan was deceptively simple. One night, camping along the Lugenda River, away from regulated tourist zones, followed by a brief game-tracking walk before bed. Antonio's insistence that moonlight would provide sufficient illumination revealed a dangerous underestimation of the challenges they would soon face. Nyasa's terrain shifts unpredictably between open savanna and dense miombo woodland, crisscrossed with dry riverbeds that create perfect hunting corridors for apex predators. The recent storm had left the soil soft and receptive to tracks. The warning signs had been mounting throughout their evening walk. Elias had discovered fresh leopard tracks, deep paths with widely spaced toes indicating a large male, but Antonio dismissed them as old sign. Antonio's past bush trips had gone smoothly, and his confidence reassured the others. When a tree squirrel's frantic alarm calls echoed from their left, Elias recognized the universal signal of a nearby predator, but his concerns were overruled by Antonio's determination to maintain their pace. Elias's warnings felt excessive, not urgent. Ricardo's decision to lag behind while checking his GPS represented the fatal mistake that leopards have exploited for millennia. These cats are patient hunters that capitalize on momentary isolation, striking when prey animals separate from the safety of the group. Male leopards, weighing up to 140 pounds, are silent ambush predators, armed with 2-inch claws, a 400 psi bite, and the ability to strike with sudden, lethal precision. The attack was sudden and silent. One moment Ricardo was adjusting his GPS. The next, a blur of muscle and rosettes exploded from the underbrush. The leopard hit him from behind with staggering force, estimated at over 500 pounds in a single strike, driving him to the ground. Leopards are ambush predators by nature, relying on stealth and explosive speed that can exceed 35 miles per hour in short bursts. There was no roar, only a grunt, the snap of bone, and Ricardo's strangled cry. By the time Antonio's flashlight cut through the dark, the scene was already gruesome. The leopard had its jaws clamped around Ricardo's throat. Though rare, experts believed the leopard reacted defensively to sudden movement at close range, mistaking it for a threat. Its forelimbs pinned him tightly, claws sunk deep into flesh, while its hind legs heaved and kicked, dragging the limp body backwards into the bush. This behavior, moving kills to secluded locations, represents millions of years of evolutionary adaptation, protecting valuable protein from scavengers and competitors. Antonio's gunshot into the air triggered the leopard's retreat, but the damage was irreversible. Ricardo lay motionless, his shirt torn across the shoulder, blood seeping from devastating neck wounds where the cat's canines had found their mark. The deep punctures along his skull and jaw told the story of a bite designed to kill large prey.
Sorry about that.
Prey instantly, severing major blood vessels and crushing vital structures in the neck. Unlike the feeding behavior seen in other attacks, this leopard had killed defensively, abandoning the body when confronted by the group, rather than attempting to feed. This suggested a territorial male protecting his range, rather than a hungry predator seeking a meal. Ricardo's funeral in Lisbon drew a modest crowd. Family, a few university peers, and colleagues from the African Project. His parents declined media interviews, requesting only that people remember him, not for how he died, but for the work he left behind. In Mozambique, park authorities increased patrols around known leopard territories and installed new signage near unofficial trails. While no formal blame was placed on the group, the incident prompted a quiet review of policies regarding private excursions by foreign workers in the reserve. As the Portuguese engineer's blood soaked into the mud of Mozambique's Niassa Reserve, hundreds of miles north in the volcanic forests of Virunga, a veterinarian would learn that even the most intelligent predators can mistake a moment of scientific
Let me guess.
curiosity for an act of war. It was April 4th, 2017, and mist clung to the volcanic slopes of Virunga, muffling the forest in damp silence broken only by distant bird calls. Beneath the canopy, a silverback troop moved unseen, their low vocalizations signaling presence to those who understood, and danger to those who didn't. Evan Ridley was a 29-year-old South African veterinarian whose 6-month volunteer placement in the Democratic Republic of Congo had earned him recognition for calm fieldwork and meticulous attention to animal health protocols. His primary assignment involved traveling between scattered rural communities near Goma, conducting livestock vaccination campaigns and helping local authorities contain disease outbreaks that threatened both animal and human populations. Though his expertise lay with domestic animals, Evan had recently been approved to join guerrilla health monitoring expeditions as part of his NGO's partnership with the Congolese Wildlife Authority. That morning, Evan departed Bukima Station with 2 experienced Virunga Rangers, Jules and Alain, plus a UN field observer, their mission to shadow one of the habituated guerrilla groups near the Mekeno sector. These troops, while accustomed to human presence, remained fundamentally wild animals operating under complex social hierarchies that humans barely understood. Mountain gorillas are immensely strong, with silverbacks weighing up to 400 pounds and capable of striking with sledgehammer force. Far from gentle giants, they are dominant males hardwired to defend their troop with explosive, overwhelming violence. The established protocols seemed straightforward. Maintain a 23-foot buffer, avoid direct eye contact, and remain upright when the silverback was visible. Rules designed to prevent the exact tragedy that was about to unfold. That day, the signs of recent guerrilla activity were everywhere. Flattened brush, broken branches, and half-chewed shoots marking the troops' feeding grounds like territorial warnings. And by 9:42 a.m., the team located their target, a massive silverback seated beside a fallen log, methodically stripping bark with teeth designed to process the toughest vegetation. Several juveniles played nearby while a female foraged 10 yards away, the scene appearing to embody the peaceful coexistence that conservationists promoted. Evan knelt near a patch of fresh dung at the forest edge, preparing to collect samples for parasite analysis, a routine procedure that would prove fatally misinterpreted. The catalyst came from an unexpected source: a young male gorilla crashing through the foliage in a chest-pounding display of dominance. This bluff behavior, common among gorillas establishing social hierarchy, triggered an immediate response from the silverback, whose gaze snapped to Evan's crouched form. In gorilla social dynamics, a lowered head and crouched posture represent submission or challenge, depending on context, and the silverback interpreted Evan's position as the latter. Jules's shouted warning came too late. The silverback launched himself forward with explosive power, covering the distance in seconds. The silverback's initial impact knocked Evan off balance, his 400-pound frame striking with the force of a small vehicle. As Evan fell, the enraged primate reared up and brought both massive fists down in rapid succession, each blow delivering crushing force to Evan's back and head. Jules later described the assault as lasting no more than 20 seconds, but those seconds were sufficient to inflict catastrophic damage. Silverbacks don't attack with malice or sustained aggression. They deliver swift, overwhelming violence designed to eliminate threats immediately. Once Evan was neutralized, the silverback simply backed away and rejoined his troop, his dominance reasserted and his territory secured. Jules radioed for help, his voice unsteady as he gave their location to distant rangers. 40 minutes later, the team arrived, hiking through wet terrain to find him alone beside Evan's body. Evan's skull had suffered catastrophic blunt trauma. His upper back showed deep bruising and multiple compound fractures, and his collection tools lay scattered and crushed around his motionless form. Virunga Park authorities filed their incident report with clinical detachment, classifying the event as a behavioral misinterpretation resulting from postural signaling combined with troop stress. The silverback was not euthanized, officials recognizing that he had simply acted according to his nature when confronted with what he perceived as a challenge to his authority. Evan's body was repatriated to Durban within days, his funeral attended by family and colleagues who struggled to understand how routine scientific work had ended in such violence. His NGO issued a brief memorial statement before archiving his contributions. However, even as the silverback's fists crushed the veterinarian's skull in 20 seconds of
Oh, the girl crushed his skull, makes sense.
misunderstood fury, in Botswana's Kalahari, an Italian interpreter would discover that a simple tire check could become a death sentence when a lioness is around. It was August 16th, 2018, and the Kalahari shimmered beneath the unforgiving African sun.
So guys, hit the pause this now, and let us continue.
Air broken only by the dry rattle of seed pods in the camel thorn trees. This was a landscape that appeared peaceful to the untrained eye, but beneath its serene surface lurked predators that had ruled these lands for millennia. Marta Bellini, a 34-year-old freelance interpreter from Milan, had arrived in southern Africa 2 weeks earlier with her younger brother Marco. Between medical and technical translation contracts, Marta traveled extensively, always seeking authentic experiences over tourist packages. This trip to Botswana was her idea, something affordable yet unforgettable that might help the siblings reconnect after years of growing apart. They had rented a used Toyota Hilux in Upington and planned a self-guided loop through the Transfrontier Park. Marta had researched extensively, printing ranger safety guidelines in both Italian and English, studying maps, and plotting GPS coordinates. She believed their preparation was sufficient for navigating one of Africa's most remote wilderness areas. But in the Kalahari, where heat distorts judgment and predators move without sound, even careful planning can unravel in a matter of seconds. What Marta likely didn't fully comprehend was the apex predator that called these arid lands home. African lionesses are perfectly adapted killing machines, weighing between 260 and 350 pounds of pure muscle and sinew. Their powerful jaws can exert over 650 pounds of pressure per square inch, easily crushing bone and severing arteries. These predators can move in complete silence across sand and scrub, using shadows and vegetation to remain invisible until the moment they strike. During Kalahari's brutal dry season, lions concentrate around the few remaining water sources, making encounters with humans increasingly likely. After crossing into Botswana at the Mabwasahuba Gate, the siblings aimed for the remote Polenswa waterhole. The area was known for its lion population, but also for its isolation. Fewer tourists meant a more authentic experience, exactly what Marta had sought. After a grueling day navigating corrugated sand tracks under the scorching sun, their vehicle stalled during a three-point turn in the loose sand. Despite repeated attempts, the engine refused to restart. With darkness approaching rapidly and no cell phone reception, they made the fateful decision to sleep in the cab and attempt repairs at first light. The windows remained sealed against the night sounds of the African wilderness. By morning, the heat had climbed past 90 degrees. Dust coated the Hilux, and the cab was stifling. While Marco tended the stove, Marta stepped out to stretch and check a low rear tire, circling to the back of the vehicle. She bent down to inspect the tire, unaware that 50 feet away, low to the ground and perfectly still, a lioness had been watching them for over an hour. African lionesses, weighing up to 350 pounds, are silent, powerful hunters with jaws strong enough to crush bone. In Kalahari's dry season, they gather near scarce water sources, making human encounters dangerously common. The predator had been using their parked vehicle as cover. Crouched in the shadow of the rear wheel, the lioness remained completely invisible against the morning glare and acacia shadows. Marco later described hearing a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath his feet. The sound was followed by rapid thuds as the lioness exploded into motion. He turned to see Marta's legs disappear around the rear bumper, followed by a flash of tawny movement that spoke of pure predatory power. The lioness struck with devastating efficiency, her massive jaws clamping down on Marta's left hip with bone-crushing force. Marta's scream echoed across the waterhole before being cut short as she was dragged backward into a clump of thorn bush just 30 feet from their vehicle. Her sandals remained behind in the sand, the only evidence of the lightning-fast attack. Marco's desperate attempts to save his sister proved futile. He slammed on the horn, holding it down for nearly a minute while shouting at the top of his lungs. When the engine finally sputtered to life, he revved it frantically, hoping the noise would drive the lioness away. The predator ignored his efforts completely. Through the rear window, Marco watched in horror as the lioness delivered the killing bite. Her powerful jaws crushed Marta's neck, ending her struggles instantly. The lioness then stood motionless for several minutes, panting in the heat, before walking calmly into the low brush without feeding. Marco remained trapped inside the vehicle for nearly 2 hours, his phone useless without signal. When a game ranger's truck finally appeared on the main road, he flagged it down frantically. The ranger followed him to the bush line, where Marta's body lay partially obscured by disturbed grass and soil. A tracking team located the lioness resting under a leadwood tree a mile east. She was darted with a tranquilizer rifle and relocated deeper into the reserve's interior, beyond normal tourist routes. Park officials determined her behavior was territorial, likely a reaction to being startled at close range, rather than predatory hunting. Marta's remains were secured and flown back to Italy within 3 days, arranged by the Italian consulate in Pretoria. The family held a quiet funeral in a Milan suburb, making no public statements. The incident received minimal coverage, a single paragraph in The Voice Botswana describing the death as unfortunate but rare. Kaligati Rangers added the event to their internal log, but made no policy changes, though a new advisory
Sorry guys, let's continue.
Visitors never to exit vehicles in unfenced areas. The lioness that Samir
Was I driving?
D'Souza was a 44-year-old Indian-born investor who had built his fortune through Mumbai real estate deals before turning his attention to exotic animal ventures across southern Africa. His latest project operated under questionable regulatory status, officially registered as a rehabilitation facility, but functioning more like a private zoo stocked with species far removed from Namibia's native wildlife.
What tiger is that?
The compound housed capuchins, lemurs, and 2 Bengal tigers, reportedly
It's Bengal tiger.
obtained through a defunct wildlife park in South Asia, transferred via private brokers with minimal oversight. D'Souza called his operation a conservation arc, though most who knew better quietly referred to it as an expensive vanity project. He walked the grounds daily in designer boots, carrying a sheathed machete more as an accessory than a practical tool, boasting to anyone who would listen about his special bond with Ravi.
His wife.
He claimed to have raised the tiger like a son, believing that trust and affection could override millions of years of predatory evolution. The compound's security protocols were dangerously informal. Enclosures lacked proper double gate systems, and feeding was often handled manually by staff who had repeatedly expressed concerns about safety. D'Souza dismissed these worries, convinced that his personal relationship with the animals made standard precautions unnecessary. His employees, mostly local farmhands with no experience handling exotic predators, had learned to keep their objections to themselves. On that fateful morning, a 3-person inspection team from the Namibian Ministry of Environment and Tourism arrived unannounced. Anonymous complaints about improper permits and animal welfare violations had finally prompted official action. D'Souza met the inspectors in the courtyard with his characteristic confidence, offering to personally conduct a tour of the facilities. When the officials requested that all large predators be secured before the walkthrough, D'Souza waved off their concerns dismissively. He insisted on demonstrating Ravi's docile nature, apparently believing that his presence would calm the massive predator.
So Ravi's a Bengal tiger?
2 ranch employees, including a handler named Peter, watched nervously as D'Souza approached the tiger enclosure. Due to the sudden inspection, Ravi had not yet received his morning feeding, a critical detail that should have raised immediate alarm. Hungry predators are inherently more dangerous, their hunting instincts heightened by the biological imperative to secure food. The tiger was pacing along the far wall of his enclosure, his tail flicking in a rhythm that experienced handlers would have recognized as a warning sign of agitation. Additionally, Bengal tigers, weighing up to 570 pounds, are silent, powerful hunters built for stealth and sudden
Bengal tigers
violence. With 3-inch claws and a bite force over 1,000 psi, they kill without warning, crushing bone and tearing flesh in seconds. D'Souza unlocked the gate and stepped confidently into the enclosure. He clapped his hands twice, whistled, and spread his arms wide in what he apparently believed was a welcoming gesture. To Ravi, however, these movements likely appeared as the erratic behavior of potential prey. Ravi stopped his pacing mid-step, fixed his predatory gaze on D'Souza, then launched himself forward. The tiger struck with both front paws, one high on the chest, one at the shoulder, driving the man backward onto the concrete floor with devastating force. D'Souza managed only a single, sharp exhalation before Ravi's massive jaws clamped around the left side of his neck. The tiger's canine teeth, over 2 inches long and designed to puncture vital arteries, punctured D'Souza's flesh. Blood arced across the enclosure, soaking the concrete in seconds as his life drained away. Declined all interview requests, holding a small cremation ceremony attended only dripping steadily from tree leaves to the forest floor below. The path was treacherous, churned into slick red mud and littered with half-chewed fruit discarded by unseen animals. Clare Sutherland was a 26-year-old graduate student from the University of Kent who had arrived in Uganda 2 months earlier for a 6-month field placement coordinated with Makerere University's primatology department. She was gathering data for her master's thesis on maternal-infant bonding patterns in chimpanzees, hoping to compare observed interactions in wild troops with previous laboratory studies. Among her peers, Clare was known for her meticulous field notes and willingness to endure the most challenging conditions that field research demanded.
Sorry guys, my list just came in my room. Okay, let's continue.
Among the chimpanzee troops, several adult males had become increasingly aggressive during recent observations, charging, displaying, and vocalizing more frequently, especially near nesting areas. The troop Clare had been monitoring was only semi-habituated, meaning they were known to researchers but not entirely tolerant of close human presence. On that fateful morning, Clare joined 2 Ugandan colleagues, James Okello and Miriam Aiken, for what was planned as a routine trek to relocate their study group and update ranging data. They carried only basic equipment, notebooks, radios, and a single GPS unit. The rain had forced them to delay their Chimpanzees share over 98% of human DNA, but they possess far greater strength and aggression. Adult males can weigh over 100 pounds, with powerful arms, crushing grips, and canine teeth that inflict serious wounds, often targeting the face, hands, and genitals to disable quickly. James Okello later described hearing a sudden rustle followed by a sharp, high-pitched scream. When he turned, Clare had vanished from view, yanked backward by something that had emerged.
Monster Math presents Addition Below 10. Okay, class, let's begin. What is 5?
I don't care. Yeah, buy something.
From the ravine edge. Racing to the spot, he found her partially down the slope, limp and pinned beneath a lone male chimpanzee. The attacking chimp was using both hands to strike Clare's head repeatedly with a thick branch. Though rare, tool use and aggression has been documented in high-stress, semi-habituated troops. The animal lifted the makeshift weapon and slammed it down, pausing briefly between strikes.
It is painful.
James shouted and threw the first rock he could find, while Miriam followed with a second projectile that struck the chimp's shoulder. The animal growled menacingly and bounded sideways into the underbrush, disappearing within seconds into the dense vegetation. Clare remained motionless on the slope, her legs bent at unnatural angles and one arm twisted grotesquely beneath her body. When they reached her, the extent of the damage was immediately apparent. Clare's skull had suffered multiple depressed fractures from the repeated blows. Deep puncture wounds marked her upper arms and neck, evidence of the chimp's powerful bite. She was no longer breathing, and James's desperate search for a pulse confirmed what they already knew. They radioed park headquarters immediately, but help was hours away in the remote forest location. It took nearly 3 hours for rangers to reach them with a stretcher, during which time Clare's colleagues maintained a vigil over her remains. Her body was carried out under a tarpaulin to prevent attracting other wildlife. That afternoon, the Ugandan Wildlife Authority suspended all research in Kibali's core study zones. Rangers identified the attacker as Guma, a low-ranking
Kuma
male recently exiled from his troop, and concluded the assault was opportunistic, driven by isolation, stress, or sudden proximity. Clare's remains were prepared and flown back to the UK within 5 days. Her university later awarded her degree posthumously, and a memorial plaque was placed in the Canterbury campus gardens. The incident received no coverage in international academic journals, dismissed in internal memos as a tragic anomaly in otherwise low-risk fieldwork. In the days following the attack, Ugandan authorities increased armed patrols along known research corridors and installed new warning signage near semi-habituated troop zones. Makerere University temporarily suspended all student
Guys, that's all for now. See you guys later.